Hello, everyone. We're here with Vays this evening to ask him a few questions about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies for Ukrainian media. So, Tone, why don't you tell the people something about yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Vays. I started out as a traditional Wall Street guy in mid 2000s. Worked for companies like Bear Stearns, JP Morgan, a few others. Kind of fell in love with cryptocurrencies a few years ago, left my job, and now I'm mostly a content creator with my own YouTube channel, a big Twitter following, and a speaker all around the world about economics, cryptocurrencies, especially Bitcoin, along with my expertise is trading. I have a lot of trading experience, and I still try to trade whenever I find the time.
Okay, so why are you interested in cryptocurrencies and when did you first realize the potential of the technology?
I first heard about Bitcoin in very early 2011 during the incident with WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks, the website that publishes, secret and leaked government documents, they were cut off from all forms of funding and donations by the likes of Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal. And Bitcoin was floated as a way for them to keep the lights on with Bitcoin donations. That's when Bitcoin first came on my radar. I wish I bought it at the time. I didn't get around to purchasing my first Bitcoins until early 2013 during the Cyprus events when the Cyprus banks got shut down and people's money was confiscated. That's when cryptocurrency first fully came on my radar at a point where I said, hey, I really need to do something in order to protect my wealth and all the money I've earned, because what if American banks shut down and they decide to confiscate money right out of my bank account? And that's where I see the biggest importance for Bitcoin is not to protect your value, because for the first time in human history, we have an asset that is unconfiscatable if you're properly protecting it, and also it's permissionless value transfer, so no one can stop me from sending that payment to anyone in the world.
Okay, in your opinion, which models of cryptocurrency implementation in the financial sphere are successful?
To me, the only one that has been successful until up to this point is Bitcoin. Now, I'm also a believer that Bitcoin will remain the only successful cryptocurrency. While there is a lot of competitors to Bitcoin that people think will be able to replace Bitcoin the way Facebook replaced MySpace, but that's just not true. I really don't see any competitors to Bitcoin. Bitcoin has by far the smartest developers maintaining its code, making sure it stays decentralized, making sure it stays this permissionless value transfer, and making sure it remains this trustless store of value. All of these other cryptocurrencies, they just have like one or two developers. They just use the hype of Bitcoin in order to pump their coins. I really haven't seen anything else out there in the cryptocurrency space besides Bitcoin that I believe has a long-term future. To me, Bitcoin and the blockchain, and to me, the blockchain is proof of work. If you're not proof of work, you're not a blockchain, in my opinion. And there's a few proof of work other blockchains out there, but they still fight for the same electricity. They still fight for the same hardware investment capital that Bitcoin has. And I don't really see them even having a chance to surpass Bitcoin. So just like we have one internet today, I do believe we're only going to have one blockchain, and that blockchain is going to be Bitcoin.
Since October 2016, the cost of Bitcoin has increased 10 times. What forecasts could you make for the future?
That's an interesting question. So while it does feel like the value of Bitcoin going up 10x this year is excessive. And my projections as of last October, November into this year were nowhere near as optimistic as our current price levels. But I don't feel that Bitcoin is in a major bubble. The last time we had a bubble, Bitcoin hit $1,200 in late 2013 and then fell about 80 to 90% in value over the next year and a half. But that year, 2013, Bitcoin went up 100x, not 10x. So going up 10x is not as unreasonable for Bitcoin as it may appear. The biggest reason why I think Bitcoin is still okay and not in a bubble is because of these altcoins and ICOs. Bitcoin might have gone up 10x, but a lot of these other coins went up 100x plus. And all of that value, I believe, doesn't have a stable foundation. I really think that the ICOs are in a dot-com style bubble. The altcoins are in a dot-com style bubble. And when that bubble pops, those people that are holding these altcoins, they're not going to go to cash. They're going to go back into Bitcoin because they started with Bitcoin in order to buy all of these alternatives. So to me, I think Bitcoin does have some corrections. Right now, it is October 25th, 26th, and we're just under $6,000. I think that there will be one more high this year, maybe in the $7,000 range. We might then drop a couple of thousand dollars to 5,000, but that's about it. I do see this giant bubble in the altcoin space and ICO space. And when that pops, it will shoot Bitcoin through the roof. And then Bitcoin might end up in a bubble. So if Bitcoin does hit, $20,000, $30,000 a coin this year, then sure, I will be worried that it's in a bubble. But right now, considering that Bitcoin has this foundation with all of its utility and all of its use cases, and yes, it's gone up 10x, but things that are totally useless have gone up 100x. And as long as I see useless things going up in value like crazy, I'm not going to be too worried about Bitcoin.
Will Bitcoin still exist in 20 years, or will something better appear in terms of virtual money?
I believe that Bitcoin will still be here in 20 years, and I'm not expecting something better to take its place. Again, Adam Smith's work on economics said that the most important thing is the productive capacity of its people. And we saw this like in the 1980s. Japan was the second biggest economy in the world. A little island with very little natural resources was the second biggest economy in the world because of the productive capacity of its people. Same thing with America over the last 100 years. It rose to where it was because of the productive capacity and the innovation of its people. We're seeing the rise of China, again, because of the productive capacity of its people. Same thing with Bitcoin. The smartest, most talented developers are programming for Bitcoin. They're not programming for these other altcoins. They're not motivated by money. They're motivated by the desire to create this unconfiscatable, censorship-resistant value transfer. And I have confidence in Bitcoin as long as I have confidence in the core developers that are maintaining the Bitcoin source code and keeping the network as decentralized as possible. So I'm not expecting anything better to come along. If there are alternatives that potentially have some kind of technology that's useful, Bitcoin can just adopt it. And that's the resiliency of Bitcoin. So I do believe it'll be around in 20 years. And I'm not scared of a competitor coming into Bitcoin anytime soon Maybe in 20 or 30 years, something completely different and completely better is going to come along, but it's going to be done by the next generation of people with that can solve additional problems that Bitcoin can't solve. And right now, Bitcoin will solve those problems. It's just a little longer for Bitcoin to solve them because of all of these attacks coming onto Bitcoin, but they'll get there.
In which cryptocurrency would you invest and why?
Once again, it takes me back to Bitcoin. The only cryptocurrency I own is Bitcoin. The only cryptocurrency I want to own is Bitcoin. There are a couple of other cryptocurrencies that I consider fair and legit that may serve some minor function, but I don't have any of them. Litecoin and Monero, for example, I do take donations in Litecoin. It's a little bit cheaper to transact. One Litecoin is cheaper, but I don't hold on to it for very long. I convert it back to Bitcoin. The only reason why I accept Litecoin is because I don't think it's a scam. I think it's a fairly created coin. But in the long run, I don't see it as a real competitor to Bitcoin because whatever Litecoin can do, Bitcoin can also do. So it's going to come back to Bitcoin. It's really the only one. It's a similar question to fiat currencies. If someone said, well, what fiat currency would you hold on to for the next few years? And my answer is going to be the US dollar. Because as much as people like to make fun of the US dollar and the Federal Reserve printing of the US dollar, it's still the most responsible Federal Reserve bank around the world. And if you're going to hold any dollar bills or any paper bills in your house for the next 3 years without worrying of its depreciating in value, anywhere in the world, it's going to be the US $100 bills. Same thing with Bitcoin. It's really the only one I want to hold on to long term, and I don't own any other cryptocurrencies.
How do you feel about the creation of national cryptocurrencies and in which countries this project might be successful?
So the creation of government cryptocurrencies is ultimately inevitable. Governments have been trying to eliminate cash for years. And now that Bitcoin is here, they can leverage this idea of cryptocurrencies in order to launch their own cryptocurrencies and eliminate cash. This is absolutely inevitable. This Bitcoin can actually help them get there. But the big difference is these national cryptocurrencies, they're not going to be decentralized. They're not going to be proof of work. So they're not going to be blockchains. They're just going to be the same digital representation of their current currency, but it's going to have this pretense of a blockchain just to eliminate paper currencies. And there are 3 serious reasons why governments want to get rid of paper currencies. One is people would not be able to exit the system, and they can set any monetary policy, including negative interest rates that they like. 2, without paper currency, you can't have a run on a bank. The events of Greece, the events of Cyprus, you can't have these people waiting in large queues for an ATM machine because there will not be any ATM machine. You can't have a run on a bank, you can't exit the system, and they can just choose how much money you can spend on your debit and credit cards. And the most important reason is most governments see its people as tax evaders by hiding their money in cash. Without cash, all businesses have to report every single dollar that they own. All people have to report every single dollar that they own. The good news is that the faster governments eliminate cash, the more useful Bitcoin becomes because it is that same alternative to the government system, like the cash system, where people can exit and hide whatever money they like or transfer the money in any way they see fit. As far as which countries have the advantage, well, it depends, right? So in order for Bitcoin to thrive, you want countries to have opposition to Bitcoin. So the more aggressive a country is on its money laundering laws, the more useful Bitcoin is. Like, one of the worst things for Bitcoin would be legalization of drugs, legalization of escorts, legalization of gambling, very low tax rates, elimination of money laundering laws. So if you do all those things, Bitcoin becomes almost useless. It still has this finite money supply, so it's a good store of value, but its best use cases come from government's grip on what you can spend your money on. And the least amount of policing that government is going to do on voluntary transactions without victims, the less useful Bitcoin becomes to the economy. So if the so this is the tough question to answer. So governments that create a digital currency in order to go against Bitcoin will be the best thing for Bitcoin. But governments that are in best position to compete with Bitcoin could be governments of countries like Singapore, Hong Kong, Switzerland. Switzerland especially, because Switzerland only remains as a country because during World War I and World War II, they were protecting other people's money. They were a safe haven for money. That's why no country attacked them in World War II. That ability to hide people's money has been removed from them recently when the US demanded for people to for them to report people's tax havens and their numbered accounts. So Switzerland could be in a position to create a digital cryptocurrency that says the hell with money laundering laws. Here's a cryptocurrency from Switzerland, and we're not going to check how you spend it. We're not going to monitor how you spend the money. So that could be a serious competition to Bitcoin. Same thing with Hong Kong, same thing with Singapore, maybe a couple of other countries. Taiwan, for example, countries that thrive on the fact that they don't police people's financial transactions. So those countries creating a cryptocurrency with minimizing money laundering laws could be serious competition for Bitcoin. But countries like Russia and America and Australia and Europe, other parts like the Euro countries, creating a cryptocurrency that would only fuel Bitcoin and make it more useful.
What is the most effective regulation model for cryptocurrency?
That again, it depends what the goal is. Like I just explained in a previous question, in that if your goal is to eliminate Bitcoin, the most effective tool is to give up on policing voluntary transactions, eliminate money laundering laws, eliminate drug laws, eliminate escort laws, eliminate gambling laws. So that's the best way to make Bitcoin less effective. But the more you fight against Bitcoin, the more Bitcoin thrives in that environment. And give people freedom. Give people freedom to innovate. One of the things that I always say is I want maximum consumer protection without the identification of the consumer. So I actually want stronger consumer. I want to protect the consumer from scammers. I want to protect the consumer from those creating these ICOs, from those creating these Ponzi schemes. But I don't want to police the consumer that's investing in them. So if you're taking other people's money, you need to be watched, but not the person giving you the money. So that would actually help innovation a lot in that regard.
Which countries are the best place for cryptocurrency development?
Probably, again, countries that police their people the least as far as voluntary transactions go. Like the Shenzhen area in China, or Hong Kong, or again, countries like Switzerland. Those are the best, but in a way, that's not where the most talent is. The most brain talent is still in America, and India's coming up. So even though the US is very restrictive in its laws, it still has some of the best universities. So a lot of the programming talent is still in America, and that matters a lot until the brain talent starts leaving for these other countries. Uh, the success of Bitcoin will be wherever the smart developers are. And right now, most of those developers are still in the United States. Therefore, the US is still the best environment based on brain talent, but not necessarily based on legal, I guess, laws and jurisdictions.
Do you think that Ukraine occupies a significant place on the world's map of crypto technologies?
I don't think so, not yet. And one of the reasons is Ukraine still has a lot of political problems. And when a country has this instability between what happened a few years ago with the revolution and then the partial war with Russia, and right now, again, this is October 2017, and Ukraine is once again having its problems with its government. The problem is that when your country is facing political instability, people are busy, people are worried how they're going to feed themselves, how they're going to feed their family, and therefore you don't really have time to devote to these side projects and thinking about Bitcoin. Now, when there is some problems in a country, it's good because it makes people run out and look for alternatives to save their money. Also, Ukraine has had its financial problems and their currency has crashed. And while Bitcoin provides a bit of a safe haven for them to protect their currencies, people in Ukraine aren't very rich. So you need resources. Like some of the best, like someone like Elon Musk, for example, who is trying to revolutionize the car industry. He made a lot of money in the early .com days by creating one of the first maps that has pretty much turned into Google Map. And then he pretty much was the early investor in PayPal. So you have these visionaries that make a lot of money, and then they can use that money for good to do something like build self-driving cars, build electric cars. The problem with Ukraine is that you don't have a lot of these pioneers. You don't have these people that are have self-made a lot of money. Like people that are rich because of government corruption, they're not innovators. You need these innovators that can try that made money from one venture and now are using that money to help the world with something good. The US has these people. Some other first world countries have these people. And this is very, very important. While there is some programming talent in Ukraine, and it helps, a lot of people outsource their development to Ukraine, but that's mostly because there is enough talent out there brain-wise, but it's also because that talent is willing to work for cheap. And I haven't really seen too much top of the line innovation come out of Ukraine yet, and that's needed. So if you're in Ukraine and you've had Bitcoin, you've done very well economically, but you do need a lot more resources in order to really kickstart a pioneer program.
Okay, and lastly, how often do you use cryptocurrency in everyday life?
I'm using it a lot more lately. I've pretty much been a holder of Bitcoin, used to do a little bit of trading, and I was always saying that Bitcoin is my store of value. But at this point, I pretty much work only for Bitcoin. It's the only payment I accept. So now I use Bitcoin almost on a daily basis as I get paid for work rendered, my consulting service, and some of the other services. As far as spending Bitcoin, I'm very, very careful. I'm trying not to spend Bitcoin because I'm expecting Bitcoin to go up in value a lot. And I would like to be one of these pioneers in the future that has enough Bitcoin to be completely independent and wealthy enough to start my own project to benefit the world in the future when I don't have to worry about money. So I'm trying to spend as little as possible. In addition, I believe that governments are going to act very hostile towards Bitcoin in the near future. And I am very careful how I spend it. Being a US citizen, I'm trying not to put myself on the radar of showing governments how much Bitcoin I have. And this is the ability that Bitcoin gives me. It gives me this unconfiscatable value transfer that nobody knows that I even have. So I'm very careful about using it to buy things like plane tickets, hotel rooms, even buying things from Amazon. I'm trying not to use it in that way, and I am treating it like peer-to-peer cash. Whenever any one of my friends, whenever I have to pay any one of my friends, I always try to convince them to take the Bitcoin. It's in their best interest, though for some reason, not many people have been taking me up on the offer. But that's starting to change because more and more people have heard about it now.
All right. Well, once again, thank you, Tone Vays, for being here with us today.
No, thank you for the interview. All right, bye-bye, everyone. Want to say hi? All right. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.